We had been plotting an extended road trip for the past several months. Our original plan was to head north to Idaho, but given our 2-week time frame, we thought it might be a better approach to shorten the travel distance and spend our limited time exploring a little bit closer to our own backyard. Even as a Colorado native, Kate acknowledged there were parts of the state she hadn't had the chance to experience yet, and I, having only been here for a few years, felt that I'd only explored a fraction of what the Centennial State had to offer. So we settled on a plan to traverse our way through the southern Rockies and a few different towns, making our way to the western slope before looping back home. Early on the first day, we pulled into a small site on a familiar Forest Service road that we'd stayed on a handful of times before. We'd set aside the first few days to chase some alpine brookies in the small stream right below our camp. Our first afternoon's excursion required a bit of navigating through down pine trees and thick brush, but we were rewarded with a scenic stretch of small water all to ourselves, and as luck would have it, the fish were abundant and eager to take a dry fly.
Is there anyone still here who feels just a little like me? And it's midnight in Houston, but my watch says 10:43. And I'm trying my best to believe in the best left in me. Oh, you're crying to test the veins of my fluid belief. Where do I go from here? Where do I go from here? When people burn bridges, the rivers, they don't seem to mind. There's a violence I found in the regular things left behind. And I'm trying my best to believe in the best left in me. Oh, this world is a mess, but it's prettier than what lies beneath.
After each bringing in more than our share of small but beautifully colored brook trout, we reflected on our day and what our trip had in store over dinner and a cold beer. We spent the next morning hiking up to the ruins of an old mining settlement. The slowly decaying homes and a single-room schoolhouse stood silently beneath the towering mountain vistas. The modest little town conjured up images of the frontier families who had ridden into this valley on horseback over a century ago, their hearts filled with nervous apprehension as they set out to find great fortune buried somewhere in the hills above. As the weekend crowds descended on the Arkansas River Basin, we packed our bags and left for our next stop, heading south, then west. We were greeted by vibrant fields of wildflowers and lush green meadows. We made our way down several roads looking for camp spots, only to find ourselves seemingly late to the party. We finally found a small site at a marginally established group camping area south of town. Between the hordes of sprinter vans, loud music, and groups of a dozen or more people camping together, it wasn't quite the solitude we were seeking, but it would do for the night. We made a hasty escape early the next morning as the sun rose. We were lucky enough to find a more private site on a different road. We spent that day exploring the small creek that ran through the valley we were in. The charcoal-colored shale river bottom and expansive valley floor felt like a scene more at home in Alaska than Colorado. The fishing was slow, so we made plans to explore an adjacent valley the following day. We made the short drive around to access the next closest river in the area. We spent the day throwing most of our fly box at some small but picky rising fish. Only bringing a few to the net during these couple days was hardly a disappointment, as the scenery alone in these wildflower-filled mountain valleys was enough to justify the time we spent there. I realized we were a short drive from a creek my good friend Caleb had been urging me to visit for a long time. When we arrived, we found that his high praise of the water was more than warranted.
I can't use you. I can't use you no more. No more. When I really needed you, baby, you were nowhere around. You pushed me when I was falling. You even kicked me when I was down. Now you really wrong me, baby. Since I'm back on my feet again, I want you, please, darling. I want you to understand. I can't use you. I can't use you. I can't use you.
Like clockwork, every afternoon, the striking flash of lightning and ominous rumble of thunder drove us back to shelter at camp, waiting out the pounding rain for even the smallest break to step out and cook dinner, before being thrust back into the camper by the evening downpour. We hastily moved our camp over to that creek so we could spend the next couple days walking the river in the early morning, pulling countless browns out of every seam and fold in the water. The next morning, we bumped further west, into the Uncompahgre region. We were greeted by lush greenery and abundant fungal growth on the forest floor from the heavy rains. We walked the creek from top to bottom, finding it swollen and off color from the recent rain, and ended up with zero fish to show for it. We decided to start heading back towards home, but with a promise to stop by a small stream I knew quite well on our way back. This was the water where I caught my first cutthroat on the fly. Every time I return, I'm encouraged to find that not much has changed. Wild, native, vibrantly colored Colorado River cutthroats sat awaiting us in the pools below.
We can float along the water from the rivers to the sea, go and drift away with the tide. We could sweat all through the summer and the winter we could freeze. I'll be there through it all at your side. So go on, lead the way, I won't be far behind. I'll be right next to you. I'll be right next to you. Anywhere you're going to school, I'll be right next to you.
We packed up our gear and pointed east towards Denver. We left with a sense of deep connection to the state we call home. Spending half a month sleeping under the countless stars and hiking through wildflowers gave us a reverence to the wild spaces that we're lucky enough to be surrounded by. We dreamed of finding new, untouched, and unexplored corners of the state, and we couldn't help but begin scheming on how soon we could get out there again.
I won't be far behind.